everyone, Sarah here. Rewind Justice brings you revenge stories that will blow your mind. If you're ready, hit subscribe and let's go.
The Thanksgiving table fell silent except for the sound of pages turning. My sister Victoria's confident smile began to fade as Richard Chen, our family's attorney for 20 years, adjusted his glasses and read the documents on my phone screen more carefully. "What documents?" Victoria demanded, her voice rising. "What is she talking about?" My mother set down her wine glass. "Rebecca, what is this about?" I kept my expression neutral. "Just some paperwork Grandpa John and I handled back in 2018. Nothing urgent." "Nothing urgent?" Richard's voice was barely a whisper. He looked at my father. "Tom, did you know about this?" Dad's fork clattered against his plate. "Know about what?" "But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let me back up to where this actually started, not at this Thanksgiving dinner in 2024, but 6 years earlier, in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and fading hope. Grandpa John had been my person since I was 7 years old. While Victoria collected academic awards and Dad's constant praise, Grandpa would take me to construction sites. He'd built a real estate portfolio from nothing, starting with a single duplex in 1974 and expanding to 6 rental properties across Phoenix by the time he retired. "Your sister's got the grades," he told me once when I was 14, standing on the porch of one of his rental houses. "But you've got the eye, Becca. You see what a property could be, not just what it is." He taught me everything. How to evaluate a neighborhood's growth potential. How to calculate true ROI including vacancy rates and maintenance reserves. How to screen tenants who'd pay on time and take care of the place. By the time I was 16, I was helping him manage the properties. By 18, I was essentially running them while he enjoyed retirement. Victoria, meanwhile, was at Stanford getting her MBA. She came home twice a year, barely acknowledged Grandpa's little rental hobby, and made it clear she was destined for bigger things. Corporate finance. Silicon Valley. Real success. In June 2018, Grandpa John had a stroke. Massive. Unexpected. The doctors gave him 3 months, maybe 6. I took a leave from my property management job and moved into his guest room. Victoria sent flowers and a card that said "thinking of you," but never visited. Too busy with a critical acquisition at her firm. One afternoon in July, Grandpa was having a good day. Alert. Sharp. He asked me to help him sit up. "I need to talk to you about something important, Becca." "Should I get the nurse?" "No. I need to talk to you about the properties." I pulled a chair close to his bed. "What about them?" "I'm leaving them to you. All 6. The whole portfolio." My throat tightened. "Grandpa, don't talk like that. You're going to." "I'm dying, sweetheart. We both know it." He took my hand. "Listen to me. Your father thinks I should split everything evenly between you and Victoria. Equal shares. Fair and square." "That makes sense," I said quietly. "Does it?" His eyes were sharp despite the illness. "Tell me, when's the last time your sister visited one of these properties?" "She's been busy." "When's the last time she asked how the tenants were doing? When's the last time she gave a damn about this portfolio I spent 50 years building?" I said nothing. "You've been here, Becca. Every step. You know these properties like I do. You know the tenants' names. You know which units need new water heaters and which ones have foundation issues we're monitoring. Victoria doesn't even know what streets they're on." "She's successful in her own way," I offered weakly. "I'm sure she is. And she'll inherit plenty from your parents someday. But this portfolio? This is different. This is my life's work. And I'm not leaving it to someone who sees it as just an asset line on a spreadsheet." He squeezed my hand. "I want you to have it. All of it. But we need to do this right, legally, so nobody can contest it later." "Grandpa, I don't know if." I already called Richard Chen. He's coming tomorrow with the paperwork. Quit claim deeds for all 6 properties. Irrevocable trust transfer. Everything documented, notarized, legally bulletproof. "What about Dad? Victoria? They don't need to know yet. This is between you and me. When I'm gone, you tell them. Or don't. But either way, those properties are yours. You've earned them." The next day, Richard arrived with a briefcase full of documents. We spent 3 hours going through everything. Grandpa signed 6 quitclaim deeds, transferring ownership of each property from John Matthew Harrison to Rebecca Ann Harrison. Richard had everything notarized on the spot, filed the documents with the county recorder's office, and handed me copies. These are now public record, Richard explained. Legally, as of today, you own all 6 properties free and clear. Your grandfather retains life estate rights, but upon his passing, you have full ownership with no probate required. And nobody can contest this? I asked. Irrevocable means irrevocable. Your grandfather is of sound mind, acting of his own free will, with proper legal counsel. This is as solid as property transfers get. Grandpa smiled. Now you can stop worrying and just focus on taking care of them. Like you've been doing. He died 6 weeks later, on a Tuesday morning in September. Peaceful. Ready. I didn't tell anyone about the transfer. Not right away. At the funeral, Victoria gave a beautiful eulogy about Grandpa's entrepreneurial spirit and how he inspired her career in finance. She cried photogenic tears. Everyone hugged her. I sat in the back and said nothing. After the service, Dad pulled me aside. Your grandfather's attorney will be contacting us about the estate. There are the 6 rental properties, some savings, his truck. We'll need to go through probate, but it should be straightforward. Okay, I said. Richard thinks we can have everything settled in 6 to 8 months. The properties will be split between you and Victoria equally. That's what's fair. I nodded. Whatever Grandpa wanted. Victoria overheard and joined us. I appreciate that, Rebecca. I know you were close to him, but I think equal division makes sense. We're both his grandchildren. Of course, I agreed. Here's the thing, I wasn't hiding the truth to be deceptive. I was waiting. Watching. Testing. I wanted to see what my family would do. How they'd treat me. Whether they'd acknowledge the 6 years I'd spent managing those properties, the countless hours, the relationship I'd built with Grandpa while Victoria was climbing corporate ladders. The answer came quickly. 2 weeks after the funeral, I was at my parents' house for dinner. Victoria was visiting from San Francisco. So I've been thinking about Grandpa's properties, Victoria announced over dessert. Once they're officially transferred to us, I think we should sell them immediately. Mom looked up. Sell them? All of them? Absolutely. The Phoenix rental market is strong right now. We could easily get $2.80 to $3 million for the whole portfolio. Split that between Rebecca and me, would each walk away with $1.40 to $1.50 million. Dad nodded slowly. That's not a bad plan. Wait, I said. What about keeping them as rentals? The portfolio generates about $12,000 a month in rent. That's solid passive income. Victoria laughed. Rebecca, rental income is for people who don't have better investment options. I can get 12% returns in the market easily. These properties are barely appreciating at 4% annually. But they are paid off. No mortgages. Pure cash flow. Exactly. Dead equity. We sell, invest properly, and maximize returns. She turned to Dad. It makes financial sense, right? Victoria's the one with the MBA, Dad said, shrugging. I set down my fork. So we're not even going to discuss it? Just sell. What's to discuss? Victoria's tone was patronizing. Rebecca, I know you helped Grandpa with the properties, and that's sweet, but this is a business decision. You have to think strategically. I do think strategically. Those properties generate barely adequate returns in a market where we could do so much better. Trust me, I analyze real estate investments professionally. This is literally what I do. Mom patted my hand. Maybe Victoria's right, honey. You could use your share to buy a condo or something. I smiled politely. I'll think about it. Over the next 3 months, the family narrative solidified. Victoria was the smart one who understood finance. I was the sweet one who'd helped Grandpa but didn't really grasp investment strategy. When Richard Chen finally requested a meeting to discuss the estate, Victoria flew in from San Francisco with a whole presentation prepared. I've created a comprehensive divestment plan, she announced at Richard's office, pulling out a bound document. I've already contacted 3 commercial real estate brokers. We can list all 6 properties as a portfolio sale, which typically attracts serious investors willing to pay premium prices. Richard cleared his throat. Victoria, before we... I know probate takes time, but we can start the groundwork now. I've drafted a partnership agreement for Rebecca and me to sign, giving me authority to handle the sale since I have the expertise. She slid the agreement across the table to me. It's very straightforward. You'll have full approval rights, but I'll handle all negotiations and broker relationships. I glanced at the document. It was thorough, professional, and it gave Victoria complete control while I'd be listed as silent partner. What do you think, Becca? Dad asked. Victoria's put a lot of work into this. I looked at Richard. He'd been silent through Victoria's entire presentation, his expression carefully neutral. Richard, I said quietly, do you have something you wanted to tell everyone? He adjusted his glasses. Actually, yes. There's been a development regarding the estate that everyone needs to know about. Victoria frowned. What kind of development? In July 2018, your grandfather executed irrevocable trust transfers for all 6 rental properties. These transfers were filed with the Maricopa County Recorder's Office and are matters of public record. The room went still. What does that mean? Mom asked. It means the properties never entered probate. They were transferred prior to John's death through quitclaim deeds. Dad leaned forward. Transferred to who? Richard looked at me. To Rebecca. All 6 properties are in her name, legally and completely. She's owned them since July 2018. You could have heard a pin drop. Victoria's face went through several expressions: confusion, disbelief, anger. That's impossible. I have all the documentation right here. Richard opened a file folder. 6 quitclaim deeds, all properly executed, notarized, and recorded. Rebecca is the legal owner of the entire portfolio. Since 2018. Dad's voice was hollow. That was before he died. Yes. Your father transferred the properties while he was alive, which is his legal right. Victoria stood up abruptly. This is unethical. He was dying. He wasn't in his right mind. I was present for the signing, Richard said calmly. John was completely lucid and acting of his own free will. I wouldn't have processed the documents otherwise. But why? Mom looked at me like I was a stranger. Why didn't you tell us? I wanted to see what would happen, I said quietly. What does that mean? I wanted to see if anyone would acknowledge the work I did. The 6 years I spent managing those properties. The relationship I had with Grandpa. I looked at Victoria. Instead, I got a presentation on how I don't understand real estate investment and a partnership agreement where I'm the silent partner. Victoria's face was red. You lied to us. I never lied. I just didn't correct your assumptions. This is unbelievable, Dad muttered. Your own family. Is that what we are? I asked. Because for the past 3 months, I've been the one who doesn't understand finance, and needs Victoria to handle the grown-up decisions. Because you never said anything. Victoria's voice was rising. If you'd just told us. Would it have changed anything? Would you have listened to me about keeping the properties? Or would you still have pushed to sell them and invest in your 12% market returns? Silence. Richard cleared his throat. If there's nothing else, I think this meeting is concluded. Rebecca owns the properties free and clear. There's nothing to probate regarding real estate. What about his savings? Dad asked. His truck. Those items will go through standard probate and be divided according to his will. But we're talking about roughly $85,000 in savings and a vehicle worth maybe $15,000. The properties represent the bulk of the estate value. Mom turned to me. So you're just keeping everything? They are mine, Mom. Grandpa gave them to me. This isn't right, Victoria said, her voice shaking. This isn't fair. Life's not fair, Victoria. You taught me that. I stood up and gathered my things. I need to get going. I have a tenant moving into the Glendale property tomorrow, and I need to do a final walkthrough. I walked out of Richard's office with my head high. Behind me, I heard Victoria start to cry. If I thought that meeting would be the end of it, I was wrong. Victoria launched a legal challenge within a week. She hired a law firm in San Francisco that specialized in estate litigation and filed a motion to contest the property transfers on grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity. It cost her $45,000 in legal fees and went exactly nowhere. Richard had documented everything meticulously. Medical records showed Grandpa was completely coherent in July 2018. The transfers were voluntary, properly executed, and legally unassailable. The case was dismissed in 4 months. My parents didn't take sides publicly, but their actions spoke volumes. They stopped inviting me to family dinners. When they did see me, conversations were stiff and awkward. Mom would ask about the properties in a tone that suggested I'd stolen them. Victoria stopped speaking to me entirely. I focused on what I did best, managing the portfolio. I upgraded 3 units, increased rents modestly, maintained tenant relationships, and built my reserves. By 2020, the monthly net income had grown to $14,500. By 2023, I'd refinanced 2 properties to pull out equity, not to spend, but to acquire a 7th property. The portfolio that Victoria wanted to sell for $2.9 million in 2018 was now worth $4.2 million and generating $16,000 monthly. I built a life. I dated. I traveled. I reinvested. I grew. And my family? They pretended I didn't exist. Until Thanksgiving 2024. The invitation came from Mom in early November. Victoria's coming home for Thanksgiving. It's been 6 years, Rebecca. We need to put this behind us and be a family again. I almost declined. But something made me say yes. Maybe I wanted closure. Maybe I wanted to see if anything had changed. Maybe I was just tired of being treated like the villain for accepting a gift my grandfather wanted me to have. I showed up at my parents' house at 2 p.m. on Thanksgiving Day with a bottle of wine and low expectations. Victoria was already there, looking polished and successful in designer clothes. She barely acknowledged me. Dinner was tense. Small talk about weather, sports, anything but the obvious elephant in the room. Then, over dessert, Dad brought it up. I've been thinking about your grandfather a lot lately. About his properties. I set down my fork. Oh. 6 years is a long time to hold a grudge over an inheritance. I'm not holding a grudge, Dad. Victoria laughed sharply. Really? Because you've been perfectly happy keeping everything Grandpa left while the rest of us got nothing. He made his choice, I said quietly. A choice you influenced, Mom added. You were there every day at the end. You had access. We didn't. Because I'd been there for 6 years before that. Where were you? I was building a career, Victoria snapped. I was working. Not everyone can just take time off to play property manager. Play property manager. The words came out harder than I intended. I've been managing those properties since I was 18 years old. I know every tenant. I know every repair history. I know which properties need new roofs in the next 3 years and which ones have the best appreciation potential. Congratulations. You want a medal? Dad held up his hands. Girls, please. This isn't productive. You're right, Victoria said, her voice suddenly calm. It's not. Which is why I think it's time we resolved this properly. Something in her tone made me wary. What do you mean? I've consulted with several attorneys over the years. The consensus is that while the property transfers were technically legal, they don't reflect Grandpa's true intentions for fair family distribution. That's not what the court said. The courts ruled on narrow legal grounds. But morally, ethically, you know those properties should have been split. She pulled out her phone and opened a document. So here's what I'm proposing. You transfer 3 properties to me. We each have half. Problem solved. I stared at her. You're joking. I'm completely serious. 3 properties for you, 3 for me. Fair division. Those are my properties, Victoria. That you manipulated Grandpa into giving you. I didn't manipulate anyone. Really? Then why all the secrecy? Why not tell us in 2018? Because I wanted to see who you really were. And you showed me. The second you thought you'd inherit something, you wanted to sell it all without even asking me. You wanted me to be your silent partner while you made all the decisions. Because I have actual expertise. In what? Liquidating assets? Those properties aren't just line items on a spreadsheet, Victoria. They are Grandpa's legacy. They are tenants who've lived there for years. They are neighborhoods I know by heart. God, listen to yourself. So sentimental. So impractical. That portfolio is worth $4.2 million now, I said quietly. If we'd sold in 2018 like you wanted, we each would have gotten $1.45 million before taxes. Instead, I've grown it by over $1.3 million plus collected nearly $900,000 in net rents. The table went silent. That's impossible, Victoria said. No, that's strategic management. That's knowing when to upgrade units and when to hold steady. That's building tenant relationships that reduce turnover. That's understanding markets. Dad's expression had shifted to something I couldn't read. Victoria's face was red. Fine. Then you owe the family. You've been profiting off what should have been shared inheritance. I don't owe you anything. The inheritance is mine, Victoria suddenly shouted, standing up. You're not getting a penny. I've earned it. The words hung in the air, bizarre and backwards. Dad nodded slowly, like this made perfect sense. She's right, Rebecca. Victoria's worked hard for this family's legacy. I felt something crack inside me. Worked hard? She hasn't visited those properties once in 6 years. I've been busy building a real career, Victoria said. Not playing landlord. I smiled. A real smile. Because I was done. I pulled out my phone and opened my email. Then I texted Richard Chen, who I'd asked to be on standby, sensing this dinner might go sideways. Richard? We're ready. Show them the 2018 trust documents. I slid my phone across the table to Dad. Richard must have been close because he walked in from the living room 30 seconds later. He'd been waiting in his car, apparently. Good evening, everyone, he said politely. I have the documentation Rebecca requested. He placed a folder on the table and opened it. Inside were all 6 quitclaim deeds, the trust transfer documents, and the county recorder's stamps. Mom reached for them with shaking hands. What is this? These are the irrevocable property transfers from July 2018, Richard explained. All 6 properties were legally transferred to Rebecca 6 years ago. She's been the sole owner since before John passed away. Victoria grabbed the documents. Her face went from red to white as she read. This can't be real, she whispered. It's completely real. Everything is properly notarized and recorded. Rebecca has owned the entire portfolio since 2018. Dad looked at me. You've owned them this whole time? Yes. And you let us think. I let you assume what you wanted to assume. I never lied. I just never corrected you. Victoria was reading through the documents frantically. There has to be something wrong. Undue influence. Incompetence. Something. I examined all of that personally, Richard said. John was completely competent. He acted of his own free will with proper legal counsel. There's no basis for challenge. You already tried to challenge it, I reminded Victoria. In 2019. Remember? Cost you $45,000 in legal fees. Her hands were shaking. This isn't fair. What isn't fair is you announcing that the inheritance is yours and I'm not getting a penny from what's already been mine for 6 years. Mom set down her wine glass. Rebecca, I think you should go. Already planning on it. I stood up and took my phone back from Dad. But before I do, let me be clear about something. Those properties? They are mine. Legally. Completely. Unquestionably. Grandpa gave them to me because I earned them. Because I was there. Because I cared. We cared, Mom said weakly. No, you didn't. You cared about the asset value. Victoria cared about the sale price. I cared about the tenants, the properties, the legacy Grandpa built. I picked up my coat. And you know what the saddest part is? If you'd just treated me like I mattered, like my contribution meant something, I would have shared everything. But you couldn't even do that. Victoria's voice was small. What are you going to do? I'm going to keep managing the properties like I have been. Keep growing the portfolio. Keep honoring what Grandpa built. That's it. What did you expect? Some dramatic revenge. After 6 years of lying to us. I didn't lie. I protected what was mine until I could see who you really were. And now I know. I walked toward the door. Richard followed me. Behind us, I heard Dad's voice. Rebecca, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. Those documents, he said. How long have you known? Since July 2018. Since the day Grandpa signed them. Silence. You really let us think we'd inherit half. I let you reveal who you were when you thought you had power over me. Turns out, you're exactly who I thought you were. I walked out into the November evening. Richard followed me to my car. That went about as expected, he said dryly. Worse, actually. I thought maybe someone would have changed. People rarely do. He handed me an envelope. There's one more thing. What? Your grandfather left letters. For you. One for each year after he passed. He gave them to me with instructions to deliver them on specific dates. My throat tightened. How many are there? 6. One for each year. This is the last one. I took the envelope. It was thick, covered in Grandpa's distinctive handwriting. He knew, I whispered. He knew exactly who everyone was. That's why he gave you the properties. Not because you were his favorite, Rebecca. Because you were the only one who would protect what he built. The letter. I waited until I got home to open it. Poured a glass of wine. Sat in the silence of my condo, purchased with rental income from the portfolio. The letter was dated September 2024, written in July 2018. Dear Becca. If you're reading this, it's been 6 years since I signed those deeds. 6 years since I trusted you with everything I built. I hope it's been worth it. Not the properties, I know you've taken care of those. But the knowledge. The understanding of who your family really is. I knew Victoria would want to sell. I knew your parents would take her side. I knew they'd see you as less than, less important, less strategic. That's who they've always been. But you? You see value where others see maintenance costs. You see people where others see revenue streams. You see legacy where others see exit strategies. That's why the properties are yours. Not because I loved you more. Because you loved what I built. You understood it. You protected it. By now, Victoria's probably tried to take them from you. Your parents probably guilt you. Maybe you stood your ground. Maybe you gave in. Either way, know this. You earned those properties with every hour you spent learning, managing, caring. They are not a gift. They are not inheritance. They are recognition. You're going to be okay, Becca. Better than okay. You're going to build something even bigger than I did because you have something I had to learn the hard way. You know the difference between people who love you and people who love what you have. Keep the properties if you can. Sell them if you must. But whatever you do, never apologize for accepting what you earned. I love you. I'm proud of you. And I'm watching from wherever I am, hoping you told them all exactly where to go. All my love. Grandpa John. I read it 3 times before the tears came. I'm writing this from the office of property number 8, a small commercial building I purchased in May 2025. The portfolio now generates $22,000 monthly net income. Victoria hasn't spoken to me since Thanksgiving. She sent one email through her lawyer demanding I reconsider fair distribution. Richard responded that there was nothing to reconsider. My parents invited me to Easter dinner. I declined. They asked for Christmas. I declined. Eventually, they stopped asking. I'm not sad about it anymore. Instead, I'm building something Grandpa would be proud of. I hired a property manager last month, a recent college graduate who reminds me of myself at 22. I'm teaching her everything Grandpa taught me. Last week, I visited his grave for the first time in months. The portfolio's at $5.1 million now, I told the headstone. Thought you'd want to know. The wind rustled through the trees. Victoria's fine, by the way. Still successful. Still convinced she's right. Still doesn't understand that some things matter more than market returns. I placed flowers on the grave, yellow roses, his favorite. I read your last letter. About knowing the difference between people who love you and people who love what you have. I smiled. You were right about that. You were right about everything. I stood there for a few more minutes, then headed back to my car. My phone buzzed. Text from my property manager. Tenant in Unit 4B wants to renew lease. Should I offer the same rate? I replied while walking, offer 3% increase. If they push back, we negotiate. They've been great tenants. Got it. You want to review the comps first? No. I trust your judgment. Because that's what Grandpa taught me. Trust the people who own it, protect what matters, and never apologize for accepting what you've earned. Victoria thought the inheritance was hers. Turns out, it was mine all along. Not because I took it, but because I earned it. Every single day for 6 years before Grandpa died, and every single day since. The properties aren't just assets to me. They are proof that sometimes the people who dismiss you are the ones who never understood your value in the first place. And I'm perfectly fine with that.